Austin Hicks strode out of the UEF Starship Endeavour into searing solar radiation that would char most aliens into cinders the second their skin touched its harsh photons. They would die screaming as their flesh broiled off their bones. But Austin just grinned, feeling the red dwarf's light as nothing more than a slight tingle on his skin. He was determined to show these arrogant Ventaxian pricks that humans were a force to be reckoned with. "Human, you dare set foot on the sacred soil of Ventax Prime without protective equipment?" Umbra snarled, his 4 glowing red eyes narrowing. The 7-foot grey-skinned alien towered over Austin menacingly. "Your kind is vastly inferior to us, unworthy of our technology and partnership. Leave now before I have you vaporized where you stand." Austin didn't flinch, meeting Umbra's gaze unflinchingly. The 32-year-old diplomat had faced down plenty of hostile alien races before. This was just another day at the office. "The United Earth Federation comes in peace, seeking cooperation and mutual benefit," Austin said calmly. "But we won't be intimidated or pushed around. Humanity has earned its place among the stars through grit, ingenuity, and courage. We belong here, whether you like it or not." Umbra scoffed derisively. "You humans are soft, weak creatures. Prove your worth by surviving the deadly conditions of Ventax Prime without your pathetic suits if you dare. Though I suspect you'll be begging to leave in minutes." Austin smirked confidently. Challenge accepted. He reached up and removed his helmet, to the gasps and cries of warning from his fellow delegates. The toxic atmosphere and intense radiation of the planet washed over him. Any other species would be in agony, flesh searing and lungs shriveling, but for Austin, it was barely an inconvenience. He spread his arms and basked in the red dwarf's rays, as Umbra and the other Ventaxians looked on in shocked disbelief. Austin knew this was humanity's chance to gain a foothold with this advanced alien race. And he would do whatever it took to prove mankind's mettle, even if it meant risking his own life under the scorching alien sun. Backing down was not an option. Humanity's future in the stars depended on this. Umbra stared in disbelief as Austin stood confidently under the harsh red sun, his skin unmarred and breathing steady. The Ventaxian's shock quickly turned to anger, and he barked an order to his subordinates. "Take this human, and subject him to the most extreme conditions Ventax Prime has to offer. I want to see him broken and begging for mercy." Austin found himself dragged to a series of increasingly hostile environments. First, he was thrown into a chamber, flooded with toxic gas at concentrations that would eat through the lungs of most species in seconds. He simply took a deep breath and nodded at his captors, unaffected. Next, they placed him inches from the blazing heat of industrial smelters, temperatures so high they would melt flesh from bone. Austin just wiped a bead of sweat from his brow and grinned. Finally, he was bombarded with the highest doses of radiation the Ventaxian's equipment could emit, enough to cook any living creature from the inside out. The human diplomat stretched and yawned, not a blister or burn to be seen. Word of the extraordinary display spread like wildfire. Crowds of Ventaxians gathered, muttering in astonishment, to witness the impossible human who defied their planet's deadly conditions. Some began to question the doctrine of human inferiority, drilled into them since birth. If this man could shrug off what killed their mightiest warriors, what else were they wrong about? But Umbra would not see his authority undermined. He shoved his way through the throng and jabbed a clawed finger at Austin's chest. "You may have some biological trick to survive our world, human, but that proves nothing. I challenge you to the trial of strength, our most sacred rite of combat. Defeat me if you can." Austin met Umbra's eyes, unflinching. He knew engaging in this battle risked derailing his diplomatic mission, but he also knew that to reject the challenge would confirm every Ventaxian prejudice about human weakness. "I accept. Name the time and place." The human delegation erupted in protest, insisting that Austin was jeopardizing everything they worked for. The Ventaxians roared, some in anticipation of seeing the upstart human put in his place, others eagerly awaiting the unprecedented spectacle. Austin and Umbra stood in the eye of the storm, neither wavering, both determined to prove the superiority of their species once and for all. The trial of strength would determine far more than just one man's fate. Austin found himself standing in the Crucible, a sprawling arena situated in the very center of the Ventaxian capital. The stands were packed with thousands of aliens, their eyes fixed on the human challenger and his opponent, Umbra. Austin could feel the weight of their collective gaze, a mix of curiosity, hostility, and anticipation. He knew that most of the crowd was firmly in Umbra's corner, eager to see the upstart human put in his place. A Ventaxian attendant approached Austin, holding out a Krath-Tar, a traditional double-bladed staff used in ritual combat. Austin took the weapon, feeling its weight and balance. It was unfamiliar in his hands, but he would have to adapt quickly. Umbra stood at the opposite end of the arena, wielding an identical Krath-Tar with an air of confidence and menace. The battle began with a fierce clash of blades, the metallic ring echoing through the crucible. Umbra pressed his advantage, his superior strength and experience allowing him to rain down heavy blows on Austin's defenses. The human staggered under the onslaught, feeling the impact of each strike reverberate through his bones. But Austin was far from beaten. His body, honed by Earth's gravity and tempered by its harshest environments, absorbed the punishment and kept fighting. Even as wounds opened up on his skin, he refused to yield an inch. The Ventaxians murmured in disbelief, as the human not only survived Umbra's assault, but began to mount his own offensive. Austin's mind raced, analyzing Umbra's fighting style and searching for weaknesses. He couldn't match the alien's raw power, but he could outmaneuver him. Austin began to dodge and weave, using his agility to evade Umbra's attacks and dart in for quick counterstrikes. The tide of battle slowly shifted as Austin landed more and more blows, his speed and precision wearing down Umbra's defenses. In a desperate bid to end the fight, Umbra lunged forward with all his might, aiming a devastating overhead strike at Austin's skull. But the human was ready. He sidestepped the blow and swept his Krath-Tar in a wide arc, knocking Umbra's weapon from his grasp. The Ventaxian staff clattered to the arena floor and skidded away, well out of reach. Umbra roared in fury and charged at Austin, determined to crush him with his bare hands. Austin waited until the last moment, then pivoted away from the alien's grasp. As Umbra stumbled past, Austin brought his Krath-Tar down in a lightning-fast strike, cracking the shaft of the weapon against the back of Umbra's head. The Ventaxian crumpled to the ground, unconscious. A hush fell over the crucible as the crowd struggled to process what they had just witnessed. A human, a member of a species they had always considered weak and inferior, had just bested their greatest warrior in single combat. As the Ventaxian crowd looked on in stunned silence, Umbra's motionless body sprawled on the arena floor. Austin stood over him, chest heaving, Krath-Tar gripped tightly in bloodied hands. The human had done the impossible, bested their champion through sheer grit and skill. But the shock quickly gave way to outrage from Umbra's most fanatical supporters. Led by his towering second-in-command, Zarthos, a mob of armed Ventaxians stormed the crucible, fury etched on their grey faces. "Treachery!" Zarthos roared, leveling a crackling plasma rifle at Austin. "Seize the human, he'll pay for this insult to our people." Dozens of weapons swiveled to target Austin as the mob fanned out to surround him. Fingers tightened on triggers, ready to cut the human down where he stood. Austin didn't flinch. Battered and bleeding, he raised his Krath-Tar in defiance. "I won this fight fairly by your own laws. Stand down." "Laws be damned," Zarthos snarled. "No primitive ape creature defeats Umbra. You die now, human." As the Ventaxian rebels prepared to gun Austin down, a group of Ventaxians who had begun to question their xenophobic beliefs leapt into the arena. They formed a living shield around Austin, facing down their armed kinsmen. "The human has proven himself worthy," one shouted. "The trial is sacred. You dishonor us all, Zarthos." A storm of arguments erupted as the Ventaxians turned on each other, pro-human and anti-human factions screaming to be heard. Plasma rifles and Krath-Tars waved dangerously as the standoff teetered on a knife's edge. Just as it seemed blood would spill, a series of deafening sonic booms rattled the crucible. Drop pods screamed from the sky, human special forces logos emblazoned on their armored shells. The pods slammed into the arena in a ring around Austin and his Ventaxian protectors. Hatches blasted open, and UEF commandos poured out, assault rifles up and scanning for targets. "Austin," a familiar voice called. Captain Nolan Ramirez, Austin's old Marine buddy. "Heard you could use some backup." Nolan and his men moved with practiced precision, disarming Zarthos and his rebel followers before they could react. In seconds, the threat was neutralized, the ringleaders forced to their knees at gunpoint. Murmurs raced through the Ventaxian crowd as they witnessed the human soldiers in action, their efficiency and technology on full display. Assumptions of human inferiority crumbled by the second. Austin shouldered his way past his protectors to stand face to face with Nolan. He clasped the captain's armored shoulder, a weary smile on his bloodied face. "Impeccable timing as always, Ramirez. Let's finish this." Austin gripped Nolan's hand, clasping it firmly as the two men surveyed the aftermath of the chaos in the crucible. Umbra's unconscious form was hauled away by a group of Ventaxians, some still in disbelief at the outcome of the trial. Austin turned to Nolan, a wry smile on his face despite the pain of his injuries. "Thanks for the assist, Captain. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us, smoothing things over with the locals." Nolan chuckled, slapping Austin on the back. "That's what we're here for, Austin. Time to put that silver tongue of yours to good use." Over the next several days, Austin and Nolan worked tirelessly to broker a tentative peace between the UEF and the Ventaxians. They met with leaders from various factions, listened to their concerns, and sought common ground. Many Ventaxians, even some of Umbra's former supporters, began to see the potential benefits of cooperation with humanity. However, not all were convinced. A faction of hardline traditionalists, led by a charismatic Ventaxian named Chrysos, refused to accept the new status quo. They saw Austin's victory and the growing acceptance of humanity as a direct threat to their way of life. "The humans are insidious," Chrysos warned his followers, his voice ringing with conviction. "They seek to undermine our very identity, to make us weak and subservient. We must resist their influence at all costs." As tensions simmered, Austin and Nolan worked to strengthen the fragile alliance. They oversaw the construction of a joint UEF Ventaxian compound, a symbol of the budding partnership between the two peoples. But Chrysos and his followers had other plans. They launched a surprise attack on the compound, armed with stolen UEF weaponry and guided by insider knowledge from sympathetic Ventaxians. Explosions rocked the compound as Chrysos' forces breached the perimeter. Austin and Nolan rushed to organize a defense, rallying the human diplomats and their Ventaxian allies. "We need to hold them off until reinforcements arrive," Nolan barked, his rifle blazing as he cut down an advancing attacker. Austin nodded, his own weapon spitting plasma bolts at the insurgents. He caught a glimpse of Chrysos through the smoke, the Ventaxian's face twisted with hatred as he directed his troops. The battle raged, the compound's defenders fighting desperately to hold their ground. But Chrysos' forces were relentless, driven by a fanatical belief in their cause. Austin watched in horror as a plasma grenade detonated in the midst of a group of human diplomats, their screams cut short by the searing blast. Beside him, a Ventaxian ally fell, his chest pierced by a crackling energy bolt. Nolan grabbed Austin, pulling him behind a crumbling wall as a hail of weapons fire chewed up their position. The captain's face was grim, his armor scorched and pitted. "We can't hold out much longer," he panted, reloading his rifle with a swift, practiced motion. "We need to—" His words were cut off by a sizzling energy blast that punched through the wall, striking Nolan square in the chest. The captain crumpled, his rifle clattering to the ground. "Nolan!" Austin screamed, dropping to his friend's side. But it was too late. Nolan's eyes stared sightlessly at the smoke-filled sky, his life snuffed out in an instant. Austin felt a surge of grief and rage, his vision blurring with tears. He snatched up Nolan's rifle, the weapon heavy in his hands. "Fall back to the inner compound," he ordered over the comm, his voice raw with emotion. "We regroup and counterattack." As the survivors pulled back, Austin took one last look at Nolan's body, a silent vow forming in his heart. Chrysos would pay for this, even if it was the last thing he did. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.